We are back, friends, and our red... all right. Another class act.
Wait a minute, I'll get him. Wait a minute, I'll get him.
What a show. This is ridiculous. I certainly hope so. Now, Burt MUSIN is with us tonight. He is a lovely gentleman. He's a nonogenarian.
What's no-no?
That's 90 years and over, in your 90s, a nonogenarian. And he'll be appearing in a weekly comedy series called Love Nest. Beginning in January. Would you welcome Burt MUSIN? Nice to see you again. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good for a nonogenarian.
Nonogenarian, right.
I didn't know that before.
You're really going to be in a series called Love Nest?
Yeah.
What part do you play?
I'm a swinging pal of the main gentleman who is not married, and he and his wife are not allowed to be married because they lose too much of their income tax. You know that whole story.
I opened the show tonight with doing some jokes about the World Series. Mm-hmm. Somebody said, what was the first World Series you ever saw?
Well,
what year?
I said 1903.
Oh, my God. The 1903 World Series.
That was the first World Series when Boston came to Pittsburgh in 1903. From Boston or Pittsburgh?
1900.
1903, yes. They came down there with it was the very first World Series. They took it very seriously up in Boston, and they sent 2 or 3 trainloads of fans down there with a great big brass band. And they had a theme song, and I've always wondered why on earth it was ever chosen, because it had nothing to do with baseball, nothing to do with Boston, nothing to do with anything in a World Series. Did you ever hear of a song called Tessie? I don't suppose so.
Tessie.
Oh, that was it.
How's it go? Can you remember?
Tessie, you make me feel so badly. Why don't you turn around? Tessie, you know I love you madly. My heart is on the ground. Now, can you imagine anything less likely to... The story was that they had played it up there with the band for some of their final games, and they thought it was a good theme song, a fetish.
And they just kept it.
They kept it, and when the series, they came to Pittsburgh. We took the first 2 games. Then they went back to Boston. We split even there, and that made it 3-1 Pittsburgh. Then they came to Pittsburgh, and we never won another game. And they played that Tessie, Tessie thing every inning. And in Pittsburgh, for 10 years after that, the song Tessie was outlawed. You weren't allowed to play it in the city limits.
1903.
1903.
That's strange.
That was the very first one.
Very first one.
First one.
Are you a football fan?
Oh, I played football. I wasn't quite good enough to make the varsity at Pennsylvania Military College, where I did make baseball and the hockey team.
What year was that
won the
now?
tennis championship. But I couldn't quite, I was only a scrub on the football team. But those were the days of guards back. And if you were to have an argument back around the turn of the century as to who would be the greatest guard in football history, Walter Camp said that the greatest guard in the world was from Yale by the name of Pud Heffelfinger. But there was another man later on that came from Swarthmore, Tiny Maxwell. Tiny Maxwell weighed 270 pounds, could do the 100 yards in 11 seconds, and with him lined up as a protective guard, all the halfback and fullback had to do was just fill in behind him, and he'd sweep the whole team right on over to the goal line. A magnificent player. After he'd finished as All-American, of course, and after he'd finished his career, he was in great demand as a referee, an umpire at the great big ball games, and he refereed in the big college games and in the early years of the professional games. I remember seeing him one time in Pittsburgh when it was a very muddy day, and the ball was slippery, so the halfback, he was wearing a beautiful white sweater, and the halfback said, "Tiny, let me this perfectly all right." He rubbed his dirt all over Tiny and Mac. But Tiny had a bit of an impediment in his speech when he, can you imagine that tonight? He had a bit of a stammer, and when he would be a little bit flustered, he would be inclined to stammer a bit. So he was refereeing a very important game. It was the championship, the Catholic Championship of the United States. Now, this was before the days of Notre Dame and Fordham. This was the two great big teams then were Georgetown and Holy Cross. And when they went at each other, it was like a bunch of Kilkenny cats. It was all for blood. So they had gone along for a few minutes, and one of the Georgetown men came up and said, "Hey, ref, look at here, look at this thumb. A Holy Cross man bit me on the thumb. Does that go in this game?" Tiny said, "Oh, go on back and play football." A couple of minutes later, Holy Cross man came up to him and said, "Hey, look at this ear, ref. That Georgetown guy bit me on the ear. Does that go in this football game?" He said, "Oh, hey, come here, you guys. Now, listen. Next year, you mix play this game on a Friday."
Let me take a break here, Bert. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us.